At dinner, my parents sneered. "How does it feel being the failure child?" I said, "How does it feel losing your mortgage sponsor?" Then I canceled the $4,000 transfer. You know that moment when something just snaps inside you? When you've been pushed and manipulated and taken advantage of for so long, and then, in an instant, you just decide you're done. Well, for me, that moment hit harder than a freight train, and it started with the $15,000 wedding deposit and the realization my own family was stealing from me. The clinking of fancy silverware on bone china was practically deafening in that New York steakhouse. One of those places where the waiters wear suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I sat at the head of a huge table, watching a waiter pour a Cabernet that I knew would add another $300 to my inevitable tab. My dad, Arthur, swirled his wine, a total pro. He's 60, silver hair still thick, Brooks Brothers suit still fits him perfectly. And his confidence? Absolutely unshaken, even though he hasn't earned a single paycheck in 5 years. "How's the market treating you, Adrien?" he asked, not because he cared about my answer, but because he was mentally calculating his next mortgage payment. "It's fine," I replied, the words clipped. I've been a senior investment analyst long enough to know "how's the market" is just code for "when's my next check?" My mom, Eleanor, was right beside him. 58, still beautiful in that specific country club way, blonde highlights refreshed every 6 weeks, skin smooth from whatever procedure she'd had last month. Her diamond tennis bracelet caught the light as she reached for her water. "Adrien, darling," she cooed, her voice warm, but her eyes? Totally calculating. Did I mention Chloe and Spencer finally found the perfect venue? And there it was. The real reason for this entire absurd dinner. My sister, Chloe, beamed from across the table. Her engagement ring, a blinding 3 carats, because Spencer Davenport III doesn't do anything small, sparkled under the chandelier. She's 25, the family beauty, her success measured solely by the pedigree of her husband-to-be. "It's this gorgeous resort in Tuscany," Chloe gushed, her voice practically an octave higher. 16th century villa, vineyard views, private chef. It's absolutely perfect. Spencer, who's about as tall and bland as white bread but with money, just nodded along. He had that look of someone born into so much wealth he never bothered developing a personality. My brother, Julian, and his wife, Maya, exchanged a quick glance. Julian, 32, was always the quiet one, the free spirit who escaped our family's expectations by becoming a teacher. Maya squeezed his hand under the table, a silent understanding passing between them. My Aunt Beatrice just sipped her martini, watching the whole show with the detached interest of someone who'd seen this play 100 times before. "The resort is divine," Mom continued, steering the conversation with the precision of a neurosurgeon. "They just need the $15,000 deposit to hold the date." She paused, her smile never wavering. "I'll send you the wire info." The table fell silent. Every single eye was on me. I took a careful sip of water, feeling the suffocating weight of their expectations pressing down on my chest. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I can't swing $15,000 right now. I'm trying to build my own emergency fund." The silence that followed was absolute. Spencer suddenly found his napkin fascinating. Julian's eyebrows practically shot up to his hairline. Even the waiter, who was approaching with bread, did a quick pivot and retreated. My father broke the stillness with a short, barking laugh. "Savings," he scoffed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to that register that always made my stomach clench. "Your job is to earn. How does it feel to be the only useless ATM here?" The table, everyone except Julian and Maya, erupted in chuckles, as if my father had just delivered some witty, insightful line instead of a cruel, public jab. I froze. The laughter hit me like physical blows. Suddenly, I was 10 years old again, sitting at the dining room table as my mother laid out our family roles like tarot cards. "Julian is the free spirit," she'd said, ruffling his hair. "Chloe is the beauty," a kiss on my sister's cheek. Then, turning to me, "But you, Adrien, you're the smart one. You are our retirement plan." The memory shifted, then dissolved. Now I was 24, a junior analyst, still drowning in student loan debt. My phone rang. It was Mom, but her voice was different, weak, frightened. "Adrien," she whispered, and I could hear hospital sounds, a doctor's voice in the background. "If we lose this house, the stress will kill me. My life is in your hands." That night, I agreed to cover their mortgage. Temporarily. That was 5 years ago. The flashback faded. The laughter at the table continued, but something inside me, worn thin over 5 years of constant demands and sharpened by 3 months of therapy, finally, irrevocably broke. I smiled. It wasn't my usual smile, the one that says, "Don't worry, I'll handle everything." This was something colder, harder. "You're right, Dad," I said, placing my fork down with a quiet clink. "A useless ATM should be out of service." The laughter stopped dead. My mother's face tightened. "Adrien, don't be dramatic. You're embarrassing us." I've never been more serious. I pulled out my phone, my fingers moving across the screen with a terrifying calm. The family watched horrified. "Let's see. First, I'm canceling the $4,000 mortgage payment scheduled for Monday." Tap. Done. "Next, I'm blocking both of your numbers from my Zelle and Venmo." Tap. Done. My mother's face drained of color. My father's did the opposite, flushing a dangerous shade of red. I threw my corporate card onto the table. "This will cover my meal and a glass of wine. The rest of you are on your own." My father stood, his napkin fluttering to the floor. "You ungrateful little brat, after everything we've done for you." I stood too, suddenly feeling taller than I ever had in my life. "What have you done?" "I paid for my own Ivy League education." "I'm paying for your mortgage." I looked at each stunned face around the table. "I'm done." I turned and walked out, feeling eyes from every table in the restaurant following me. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft tap of my heels against the marble floor. Outside, the night air hit me like freedom. For the first time in 5 years, I could finally breathe. The Uber lurched through Manhattan traffic, my phone vibrating itself to death in my hand. The screen flashed like a slot machine hitting jackpot, only I hadn't won anything but confirmation that I'd kicked a hornet's nest. "Eleanor, you'll kill me. Is that what you want? Call me now. Arthur, you will fix this. This childish tantrum stops today. Chloe, you've ruined everything. The venue won't hold without the deposit." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. A hot, sick feeling spread from my stomach to my limbs. I'd never defied them like this, not once in 29 years. The messages blurred as tears threatened, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Then another notification appeared from an unexpected source. "Julian, are you okay?" That was incredible. I stared at the screen, reading his words over and over. My brother had never sided with me against our parents. Never. He'd always been the quiet one, the one who escaped by becoming invisible. And yet here, in 6 simple words, was the first support I'd ever felt from my family. Something small and warm unfurled in my chest. A fragile thing, but stronger than the panic that had been choking me. The next morning, I called in sick to work. It wasn't a lie. The thought of pretending everything was normal while fielding frantic calls from Eleanor made bile rise in my throat. Instead, I showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, not the tailored blazer and slacks Arthur once told me made me look the part of family provider, and headed downtown to my financial advisor's office. Mark Wilson had handled my investments since my first bonus check. He'd never questioned the steady outflow of funds to accounts with the Holloway name. Never suggested I might be overextending myself. When I entered his office now, his expression shifted from professional welcome to genuine concern. "Adrien, what's going on? Your message said it was urgent." "I need a complete audit," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Every dollar that's left my accounts in the last 5 years. I need to see the damage." 2 hours later, we had a number. Mark turned his computer screen toward me. A spreadsheet, row after row of transactions, each one color-coded by recipient. The total glowed at the bottom of the page like a malignant tumor. $350,000. Not including the little gifts I'd bought them, the expensive dinners, The loans I'd never see again. $350,000, I whispered, the number scraping my throat raw. The sick feeling returned, but alongside it came a strange vindication. I wasn't crazy. The vague unease that had been growing for years wasn't paranoia, it was survival instinct. But Mark wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his usual professional detachment cracking. The number is bad, Adrien, but this is worse. He turned his screen again, clicking to a new tab. I pulled your full credit report. The page showed 3 active credit cards and a personal loan I'd never seen before. All opened 2 years ago. All mailed to my parents' 5-bedroom estate in Westchester. The balance on each hovered near its limit. Total fraudulent debt, taken out in my name, with my social security number, $60,000. The room tilted slightly. My fingernails dug into my palms. They committed identity theft? Mark said, his voice gentle but firm, this isn't just family taking advantage, Adrien. This is criminal fraud. The realization crashed over me in a wave. It wasn't just exploitation. It was identity theft. It was a crime. The sacrifices my parents always mentioned were mine. And the obligation I felt was a one-way street. In that moment, my father's face rose in my mind. Arthur, the former executive, who couldn't possibly take an $80,000 job because it was beneath him. Arthur, who somehow knew enough about credit applications and verification processes to open accounts in my name without me noticing. Arthur, whose ego couldn't stand a step down the socioeconomic ladder, but whose moral compass apparently had no issue with committing felony fraud. And beside him, in my mind, stood Eleanor. My mother, with her convenient health crises that always seemed to flare up when I questioned a payment. The emotional weapon, perfectly calibrated to keep me distracted, guilty, and compliant, while Arthur siphoned away, not just my current earnings, but my future as well. The panic I felt leaving the restaurant last night was gone now, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This was no longer a family dispute. It was a legal matter. I thought of my therapist, the one I'd been seeing for 3 months. The one who first used the word abuse to describe my family's behavior, making me flinch and argue that they just needed help. I pulled out my phone and dialed her office. Dr. Hammond? It's Adrien Vance. I need a referral. For a financial litigation lawyer. A tough one. She didn't ask questions, just gave me a name. Cynthia Blackwell, notorious for her scorched-earth approach to financial crimes. I hung up and immediately made an appointment for tomorrow morning. For the rest of the day, I sat in my apartment, methodically calling credit bureaus and fraud departments. With each call, each report filed, each account frozen, I felt stronger, more certain. My phone continued to vibrate, but the tone of the messages shifted as the day progressed. The initial anger gave way to confusion, then to panic. Arthur, what have you done? The card was just declined. Eleanor, the bank called about the mortgage. Call me now. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't running from my family's demands. I was standing my ground. This wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about resistance. Monday came and went. With it, the mortgage payment deadline. My phone buzzed incessantly, the screen lighting up with my parents' names until I finally silenced it completely. The quiet lasted exactly 12 minutes before they switched tactics. Voicemails piled up. I played the first one while making coffee, Eleanor's voice wavering with practiced fragility. Adrien, please, she sobbed. The bank is calling. They're threatening foreclosure notices. Please call me back. Delete. The second message came an hour later, her tone shifting. After all the sacrifices I made for you, carrying you for 9 months, choosing your schools, giving up my career, this is how you repay that? Delete. By afternoon, the messages turned dark. You are tearing this family apart. Your father can't sleep. I can't eat. Is that what you want? To destroy us. I set my phone down, surprised by my own calm. In the past, these messages would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and panic. Now they sounded like what they were, the desperate flailing of people who'd lost their grip on their favorite puppet. My therapist calls this progress. I call it clarity. The buzzer to my apartment sounded at 7:14 p.m. I checked the security feed on my phone, expecting a food delivery. Instead, I saw my father's face, contorted with rage as he jabbed the button again and again. I watched, transfixed, as Arthur screamed at my doorman, his suit jacket rumpled, his silver hair standing on end. "I need to see my daughter. Now. This is a family emergency." The doorman, Hector, remained impassive. "Sir, if Miss Vance wanted to see you, she would have authorized your entry." "Do you know who I am?" Arthur's face flushed darker. "I'm paying for this building. My money bought this place." I watched Hector's expression shift from polite to cold. "Sir, I need you to leave the premises immediately, or I will call the police." Arthur took a step toward him, finger pointed like a weapon. "You listen to me, you little. That's enough." Hector reached for his phone. "I'm calling the police now." The threat of police involvement deflated my father instantly. His shoulders sagged. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, suddenly remembering he was Arthur Holloway, respected community member, not some common criminal. "Fine," he muttered. "Just tell her I was here." He left, but 20 minutes later, a folded piece of paper slid under my door. I picked it up, recognizing my father's aggressive handwriting, the pen having nearly torn through the paper in places. "UOS. Fix this." Just 4 words. Not, "I love you," or "let's talk this out," or even, "I'm sorry." Just a demand underlined 3 times, the entitlement radiating from the page. I placed it carefully in a folder marked evidence. My phone chimed with a text. "Chloe, right on cue. Addie, Mom is having heart palpitations. She's so worried. The doctor says it's stress-induced. Can you please just pay it? I'm so scared for her health." The familiar knot formed in my stomach, my sister's specialty, the guilt bomb. 3 months ago, this message would have sent me running for my laptop, ready to make the transfer while apologizing for causing such distress. Instead, I remembered the $60,000 in fraudulent debt. The credit cards opened in my name. The loans I never saw. I felt nothing but disgust at the coordinated attack. I texted back a single word, "No." Then I blocked her number too. Wednesday morning, I called my therapist. Dr. Lillian Fisher had been seeing me for 3 months, not long in therapy terms, but long enough to recognize an emergency. "I can fit you in at noon," she said, hearing something in my voice. Her office smelled of leather and Earl Grey tea. I sat in the worn armchair, recounting the events of the past 48 hours. I expected to cry. I'd always cried in this room, talking about my family. But today, there were no tears, just cold, hard anger. "They stole from me," I said, my voice steady. "They manipulated me, and now they're trying to use the same tactics to force me back into line." Dr. Fisher nodded. "What's different this time?" "I see it now. All of it. The patterns. The manipulation. The lies." She smiled, not with joy, but with recognition. "You weren't a victim, Adrien. You were a survivor of a long-term emotional siege. Now you're a strategist." Strategist. The word felt right, like armor. "So, what does a strategist do next?" I asked. "She prepares her battlefield." Thursday morning, I met my new lawyer, Martin Cohen. His office was nothing like the plush, wood-paneled spaces I'd imagined. It was stark, utilitarian, and absolutely packed with files. His handshake was firm, his gaze direct. "Let me understand," he said, reviewing the notes from my financial advisor. "Your parents have been systematically draining your accounts for 5 years, to the tune of $350,000. "Yes. And now we've discovered $60,000 in fraudulent debt taken out in your name." "Yes." He removed his glasses, polishing them slowly. "Miss Vance, I've been practicing law for 27 years. I've seen a lot of financial abuse cases." He put his glasses back on, his eyes magnified and serious. "This is our leverage. This is everything." For the next week, I became a document archaeologist. I dug through 5 years of financial records. I got sworn affidavits from my financial advisor, documenting the steady drain on my accounts. I pulled every bank statement, highlighting the transfers, 4,000 here, 15,000 there, death by 1,000 cuts. I saved the voicemails. I printed the texts from Chloe. I screenshotted the security footage of my father threatening my doorman. Each piece of evidence made me stronger. Each record stripped away another layer of guilt. By the following Wednesday, I had a file 3 inches thick, documenting 5 years of systematic financial and emotional abuse, culminating in a felony. I was ready. I sat in Martin Cohen's office, my hands steady as I dialed my parents' number. The call was on speakerphone and being recorded, with Martin sitting silently across from me. My mother answered on the first ring. Adrien? Oh, thank God. Mom, Dad, I've reviewed my finances. I'm willing to have one meeting to discuss this. The relief in Eleanor's voice was palpable. Oh, thank goodness, Addie. We knew you'd do the right thing. Your father found a lovely Italian restaurant for. It won't be at a restaurant. My voice was cool, professional. It will be at my lawyer's office. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Be there. I hung up before she could respond. The silence on the other end was a perfect, sudden void. Martin nodded. Just once. Well done. The power has shifted. They know they've lost control. The next morning, Martin and I sat in a sterile conference room. The clock on the wall read 9:57 a.m. My case file sat between us, neatly labeled and organized. At precisely 10 a.m., his assistant opened the door. Arthur and Eleanor walked in, looking annoyed and entitled. Eleanor wore her pearl necklace, her armor for difficult social situations. Arthur's suit was freshly pressed, his posture rigid with indignation. They sat down across from us, clearly expecting to browbeat their daughter back into submission. They had no idea what was waiting for them. All right, Adrien. My father began, his voice carrying that familiar note of authority that once made me shrink. This little tantrum has gone on long enough. We're willing to accept your apology and, Mr. and Mrs. Holloway, Martin interrupted, his voice cool and professional. This is not a negotiation. We're here to inform you of your options. He slid a file across the table. This is a copy of a police report we have already filed with the NYPD for identity theft. My mother's hand froze halfway to the folder. It details $60,000 in fraudulent credit cards and loans opened in your daughter's name, Martin continued. We have the statements, the applications, and the IP logs. I watched their faces transform. My mother's skin turned the color of chalk, her fingers clutching her designer purse like a life preserver. My father's complexion did the opposite, flushing a dangerous shade of purple that climbed from his collar to his hairline. How dare you? My father slammed his fist against the table, making the water glasses jump. This is a family matter. You'd send your own parents to jail over a misunderstanding. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Not the delicate, dignified kind she displays at country club functions, but the messy, desperate kind that smeared her mascara. Adrien, how could you? Her voice broke, her hands reaching across the table. I pulled mine back. After all the sacrifices we made, we just needed a little help. You have so much. It was your obligation. There it was. The guilt bomb. The emotional nuclear option my therapist had prepared me for. The weapon they'd deployed countless times over the years whenever I showed the slightest resistance. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. I watched my mother's performance, the trembling lip, the heaving shoulders, and searched for the familiar ache in my chest, the crushing weight of responsibility that had been my constant companion. And found nothing. Not anger. Not hurt. Just a vast, cool emptiness where the guilt used to live. I turned to my lawyer and nodded once. Martin continued as if they hadn't spoken, his voice as calm as if we were discussing the weather. As I said, the report is filed. This is a non-negotiable step required by the credit bureaus to clear Adrien's name. The DA is very interested. My father's face twisted with rage. I recognized the expression, the same one he wore when I announced I wouldn't be paying for Chloe's car insurance anymore. The look that once sent me scrambling to appease him. However, Martin said, removing another document from his portfolio. Adrien has spoken with the district attorney. She will advocate for probation instead of jail time. My mother looked up, hope flickering across her tear-stained face. On one condition. Martin slid the second. Document forward. You agree to full, immediate restitution of the $60,000. My father barked a laugh, sharp and bitter. We don't have $60,000, you know that. Which is why, Martin said, sliding over a second set of documents, you will be putting your 5-bedroom home on the market. Today, the sale will be handled by an escrow company we've selected to ensure the $60,000 is paid directly to the creditors. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched the truth settle over them like ash. They were trapped. It was either sign the papers or face a felony conviction. Their family matter had become a legal execution. My father's hands, the same hands that once ruffled my hair when I brought home straight A's, the same hands that signed loan applications in my name, began to tremble. My mother's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her like air from a punctured balloon. You can't be serious, my father said, but the bluster was gone. His voice sounded old, suddenly hollow. Your daughter is deadly serious, Martin replied. Sign the papers or the DA moves forward with charges. Your choice. My mother looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. Not as the retirement plan, not as the ATM, but as a person with boundaries she'd violated. How will we live? She whispered. The words should sting. They should activate the caretaker programming buried deep in my DNA. But I thought of the $350,000 I'd already given them. I thought of the lies, the manipulation, the identity theft. I thought of 5 years of my life spent working 60-hour weeks to maintain their lifestyle while neglecting my own future. That, I said, my voice soft but steady, is not my problem anymore. My father's jaw worked, his pride warring with his self-preservation. Finally, he reached for the pen Martin offered. This isn't over, he muttered as he signed. But we both knew it was. As his pen scratched across the paper, I felt something in my chest loosen, a knot I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. The meeting ended quickly after that. No tearful goodbyes, no promises to stay in touch, just the cold efficiency of paperwork being processed, of boundaries being erected. Outside the office, standing on the sidewalk in the bright New York morning, I took a breath that felt different than any I'd taken in 5 years. Lighter, cleaner. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from Julian. How did it go? I looked at the screen for a moment, then typed. It's done. I'm free. The Holloway's pristine white 5-bedroom colonial hit the market on a Tuesday next week. By Wednesday afternoon, the listing had 37 saves and 12 showing requests. By Thursday morning, their friends were texting. Downsizing, asked the country club president's wife. Retirement property in Florida, suggested Eleanor's bridge partner. My mother didn't answer any of them. For the first time in her 58 years, Eleanor Holloway had nothing to say. The shame of it silenced her more effectively than any argument ever could. I watched it all from a distance. Not with joy, but with a cold, steady clarity. The weight I'd carried for 5 years had lifted. My shoulders straightened a little more each day. My breathing deepened. My therapist called it reclaiming your power. I called it survival. Julian called me on Friday night. It's like watching a meteor hit, he said, his voice low, as if Arthur might overhear him even though he was calling from his own home. Mom hasn't left her bedroom in 3 days. Dad just sits in his study drinking scotch. Are they asking you for money yet? I asked, running my finger along the edge of my kitchen counter. The pause told me everything. They tried, he finally admitted. I said no. I smiled. Later, as she slept on my couch, I stood at my window watching the city lights. I thought about how parents are supposed to protect their children, not use them as collateral. 2 weeks later, I received an email from the escrow company. The sale of the Holloway's estate was complete. The $60,000 in fraudulent debt had been paid in full. My credit score had already jumped 47 points. My lawyer called to inform me that Arthur and Eleanor had been forced to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in a building with no doorman, no elevator, and no prestige. The remaining money from the sale after the mortgage payoff and my restitution barely covered their security deposit. They didn't even look at me when they signed the papers, I told my therapist later that week. Not once. How did that make you feel? She asked. Nothing, I replied. I felt nothing at all. 3 months passed. Chloe moved to Boston for a fresh start. Julian and Maya had me over for dinner twice a month. I cooked more. I slept better. I dated a little. I breathed. Then, on a Tuesday evening as I was reviewing quarterly projections, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Adrien. My father's voice. Smaller. Older. It's your dad. I said nothing. We're having trouble with the deposit on the new apartment, he said, a tremor in his voice. I just thought maybe. 5 years ago, those words would have sent me scrambling for my laptop, ready to transfer whatever sum was needed to maintain the peace. That is not my problem, I said, my voice steady. A long pause. I could hear him breathing. Adrien, please. I ended the call without another word. I felt no guilt. No lingering obligation. Just a quiet, certain freedom. I blocked the number without a second thought and turned back to my laptop. The spreadsheet open on the screen had a new title, Condo Down Payments. I was looking at 2 bedrooms with views of Central Park. The useless daughter had become the only one who escaped. 18 months later, morning sunlight streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden rectangles across hardwood floors. I stand in my new 2-bedroom condo overlooking Central Park, coffee mug warm in my hands. The view still stops me in my tracks sometimes, a living, breathing tapestry of green amid Manhattan's concrete and steel. My phone pings with a calendar reminder. Housewarming party. 7 p.m. I smile. The $60,000 in restitution made for a perfect down payment on this place. Justice, with a view. Last week, I ran into Spencer at a financial conference. He mentioned seeing Arthur stocking shelves at Kroger. Eyes down. Shoulders hunched. His criminal record for fraud made him permanently unemployable in the financial sector. Eleanor works as a part-time cashier at the same store. Her social circle vanished like morning fog. The mighty Holloways, brought low by their own greed. I don't feel the satisfaction I once imagined. Just peace. The doorbell rings at 6:58 p.m. Julian and Maya arrive first, arms loaded with grocery bags. We're making the drinks, Julian announces, kissing my cheek. My brother moves through my kitchen with easy familiarity, pulling out bottles and glasses. Maya arranges a platter of appetizers. Your place looks amazing, Adri. The condo fills quickly. My therapist brings homemade bread. My financial advisor arrives with his husband, both admiring the view. Former colleagues, new friends. Warmth and laughter replace the tense, performative dinners of my past. This isn't an obligation disguised as celebration. This is mine. The doorbell rings again at 8:15. I open the door to find Chloe standing there, hands clutching a brown paper bag. She looks smaller. Somehow, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. The perfect blowout is gone, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Adrien, she says, her voice barely audible above the party noise. I'm in therapy. I'm working at a coffee shop. I am so sorry. For everything. She holds out the bag. Inside is a bottle of wine, $15 according to the price tag she forgot to remove. The symmetry isn't lost on me, $15 for a bottle instead of $15,000 for a deposit. The old Adrien would have rushed to comfort her, to say it was all okay, to erase her discomfort at the expense of my own, the caretaker, the fixer, the retirement plan. I study my sister's face, seeing not my mother's pawn, but Chloe herself. Humbled. Human. Thank you for coming, Chloe, I say simply, stepping aside to let her in. It's not absolution. It's not instant forgiveness. It's a door barely open on my terms. My phone buzzes in my pocket. I glance at the screen, an email from my mother. I delete it without reading. My parents were not invited. Later, when the noise inside grows too loud, I step onto the balcony. The park stretches below, streetlights tracing its paths like strings of pearls. Behind me, glasses clink and laughter rises. Julian tells a story that makes everyone howl. Chloe sits quietly in a corner, talking with Maya. I take a sip of wine and feel the cool air on my face. For 29 years, I lived as someone's investment, someone's safety net, someone's ATM, standing here, watching the city lights shimmer against the darkening sky. I am none of those things. I am just Adrien, and I am free.